The number on the left was $1.2 million. The number on the right was $8.9 million. Congressman Jared Moskowitz set both documents on the table simultaneously, side by side, pushed them toward the document camera, and let every monitor in the room display them at the same time. One document was the actual operational cost report filed by the Border Patrol Field Office. The other was the emergency funding authorization signed by Stephen Miller, claiming the same operation cost $8.9 million. The same operation, the same dates, the same personnel. Two completely different numbers. A $7.7 million gap. Moskowitz looked up and asked one question. Where is the extra $7.7 million? Miller's lead attorney picked up his pen, set it back down. His second attorney turned to a blank page. Neither wrote anything. House Oversight Committee, Room 2554. Monday morning, 11:33 a.m. Eastern. The hearing had been running for 90 minutes. Standard border security oversight, operational costs, staffing levels, enforcement metrics. Miller had been smooth throughout. He knew these numbers. He cited them correctly. He had been through border funding hearings before and understood the specific language that makes budget questions sound complicated enough to deflect. Moskowitz is not easily deflected. He is the former director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. He spent years managing disaster relief budgets, emergency disbursements, federal cost certifications. He knows exactly how emergency funding authorizations work. He knows what they require. He knows what happens when the numbers on the authorization do not match the numbers in the operational record. He spent his career catching exactly this kind of gap. Wellian a membro kadbaning wamapaning for a fimmingiler woman a mini final sat, checking every answer against two documents sitting in a folder on the table in front of him, waiting for his turn. Then it was his turn. Mr. Miller, I want to talk about the Rio Grande Valley Emergency Operations Surge, January 14th through January 28th, 14 days. I have the operational records. He opened the folder. This is the operational cost report filed by the Rio Grande Valley Sector Chief on February 2nd. Personnel costs, equipment, transportation, detention facility utilization, contractor support, administrative overhead. Total cost, certified by the sector chief and countersigned by the regional comptroller, $1.2 million. He set it on the left side of the table. He reached for the second document. On January 29th, one day after the operation concluded, your office submitted an emergency funding authorization to the Treasury Department. Same operation, same dates, same personnel, and it certifies the cost to Treasury as $8.9 million. He set the second document directly next to the first. $1.2 million in the operational record, $8.9 million in the emergency authorization, a $7.7 million difference, certified by two different parts of the same department on 2 consecutive days. Where is the extra $7.7 million? The room went quiet. The quiet of people running arithmetic and arriving at the same answer, and the emergency authorization that claimed $8.9 million carried Miller's signature. Miller leaned toward his microphone. Emergency funding authorizations incorporate projected costs beyond direct operational expenditures. They include downstream costs, follow-on requirements, infrastructure considerations that field-level reports do not capture. Moskowitz held up his hand. I ran emergency operations for the state of Florida. I have certified hundreds of federal cost reports. Downstream costs appear as separate line items with separate justifications. They do not disappear into an undocumented $7.7 million gap between a field report and a federal authorization. He pulled out a third document. I pulled the emergency disbursement record. Treasury released $8.9 million to DHS on February 4th. The $1.2 million in documented costs was drawn on February 7th. Correct, matching the field report. But the remaining $7.7 million stayed in the sub-account until February 19th. Then it moved, all of it, in a single transfer, to a DHS holding account with no designated program purpose. He looked at Miller. $7.7 million went from an emergency operations sub-account to an undesignated holding account 22 days after being dispersed for an operation that cost $1.2 million. Where did it go from there? Miller's lead attorney stood. Mr. Chairman, questions about specific sub-account transfers involve technical Treasury operations that my client, Moskowitz, did not look at him. The authorization certifying $8.9 million for a $1.2 million operation is signed by your client. These are arithmetic questions, and the arithmetic has a $7 million answer that needs a destination. The attorney sat. He pulled out a fourth document. On February 23rd, the holding account transferred $7.7 million to a private bank in Miami with correspondent banking relationships in the Cayman Islands. The receiving account is registered to Coastal Emergency Solutions, LLC, incorporated in Florida, on January 11th. 3 days before the Rio Grande Valley surge began, one listed business purpose, emergency operations consulting, no employees, no federal contractor registration, no prior DHS relationship. A company incorporated 3 days before the operation received $7.7 million claimed as emergency operational costs for that operation, no employees, no contracting history, and the authorization that generated those funds carries your signature. He pulled out his phone, opened the stopwatch, pressed start. 10 seconds, Miller's hands on the table. His earlier attempt to answer had been shut down by his attorney's whisper. He said nothing now. 20 seconds, his lead attorney writing something, stopping, looking at Miller, writing again. 30 seconds, a Republican committee member from Florida spoke. Jared, Coastal Emergency Solutions, is that a Florida company? Moskowitz nodded without breaking focus. Incorporated January 11th in Tallahassee, 3 days before the operation, no employees, one stated business purpose. Received $7.7 million 23 days later through a DHS holding account and a Miami correspondent bank. 40 seconds, Miller said nothing. 60 seconds, 1 full minute, Moskowitz stood slowly and walked toward the center of the room. The gap between $1.2 million and $8.9 million did not happen by accident. Someone looked at a $1.2 million field report certified by 2 career officials and decided to certify $8.9 million to Treasury in an emergency authorization. That decision required specific knowledge. Emergency disbursements move faster than standard appropriations and receive less scrutiny, and it required a destination already waiting for the difference. 80 seconds, Coastal Emergency Solutions was that destination, built 3 days before the operation, registered for exactly the right business purpose, waiting. 100 seconds. His second attorney stood. Mr. Chairman, my client, the chairman cut her off. Your client will answer or we proceed to contempt. She sat. 120 seconds. 2 full minutes. Moskowitz stopped walking. Certifying false cost figures in a federal emergency funding authorization is a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001, maximum 5 years. Diverting the resulting disbursement to a shell company is 18 U.S.C. 1956, federal money laundering, maximum 20 years. Creating the shell company in advance adds 18 U.S.C. 371, conspiracy, false certification, emergency disbursement, shell company, offshore correspondent banking. The mechanism is identical to prior transfers this committee has investigated. The only difference is the amount. 140 seconds. Miller's jaw tightened. Both cameras caught it. 160 seconds. The sector chief who filed the $1.2 million report has been contacted by this committee. That person is prepared to testify under oath that the field report accurately reflects the operation's true costs and that they had no knowledge of the $8.9 million emergency authorization. 180 seconds, 3 full minutes. The regional comptroller who countersigned the field report, same response, accurate certification, no knowledge of the emergency authorization, no involvement in the $8.9 million figure. 200 seconds, 2 separate officials, 2 separate certifications, both prepared to testify that $1.2 million is the accurate number. The emergency authorization certifying $8.9 million has exactly one signature, yours. 210, 215, 220, 226. Moskowitz stopped the timer. He looked at the committee. He turned to the chairman. The witness has refused to answer. I move to refer this matter to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation under 18 U.S.C. 1001 and 18 U.S.C. 1956. I further move to subpoena the complete incorporation and banking records for Coastal Emergency Solutions, LLC, and to request immediate Treasury Department review of all emergency funding authorizations signed by Miller's office this fiscal year. All three motions seconded. All three passed unanimously. Moskowitz held up both originals side by side one final time. $1.2 million, $8.9 million. Same operation, same dates, same personnel. A $7.7 million difference that went to a 3-day-old Florida company with no employees and a Miami correspondent bank with Cayman Islands relationships. 2 sector-level officials certified $1.2 million, both prepared to testify. 1 signature certified $8.9 million. He set them on the committee table. The arithmetic is simple. The destination is documented. The 2 witnesses are ready. $7.7 million has to be somewhere, and if this pattern repeats across other operations, $7.7 million becomes a much larger number very quickly. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the Treasury review of every emergency funding authorization Miller's office signed this fiscal year is the next development, and the pattern is already visible.